Just now joining us, please use the chat feature to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Regardless of where you're from, we are so thrilled to have you here this evening for Gather Round, an evening of storytelling to benefit the Compass Center for Women and Families in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We will be recording this evening's storytelling event. So toward the end of the event, we will be going into breakout rooms, and we'll invite those of you in the audience to share your own stories and dialogue with us. And at that point, we will stop the recording so you can feel free to share. But up until that point, we will record this evening's storytelling event. We also want to invite you to donate to Compass Center this evening. There is a link that will be posted throughout the evening in the chat feature. This will take you to a secure site where you can give a donation, and the Compass Center would be more than happy to receive those gifts, and you can know that they will be making a tremendous difference here in our community and throughout North Carolina. We are so excited that you have decided to take some time and join us. And as we gather around virtually at our computers and our tablets and our phones in the safety of our homes, yet together in spirit, I want to welcome you to this very unique event where we're going to talk tonight about what it means to be brave. Regardless of who you are and where you are from, we are very much united in a common experience at this very unusual moment in time. We're living through a global pandemic. And for most of us, it's the first one of our lifetimes. And it has affected all of us profoundly. COVID has called upon all of us to be brave in the face of a viral outbreak. Some of us have faced tremendous losses, such as employment or housing, and all of us are feeling the loss of social connection. We've all had our sense of security deeply shaken, but we've all responded to the call to wake up every day and persist and live a life of purpose and keep being brave. I want to recognize the planning committee for this evening, Joy Javits and Miranda Welgos, who is handling technology for us. We're very thankful for her expertise. And at this time, I want to turn it over to the fundraising committee, Claire Williamson and Leslie Massicott. I want to let them tell you a little bit about what we will be doing in terms of fundraising and how your gifts can make a difference. Leslie or Claire, would you like to jump in?
I can go ahead and jump in. Claire, I think, is having mute difficulties. But yeah, this is Leslie, and I'm so glad that you all are here, and I can see some of your faces up at the top. It's really exciting. This is our agenda for the evening. We're going to do a little bit of learning. I'm going to talk a little bit about Compass Center, which is where I work. We're going to listen to some amazing stories from two professional storytellers. We're really excited to have them. And then we are going to give you all a chance to share as well, share your own stories. So, but we are here today ultimately because 1 in 3 women have experienced intimate partner violence. Now, just let that sink in for a second, because that's a huge statistic, right? Now, during COVID, the cases of domestic violence in particular are even higher, right? Due to a number of factors like this one, like isolation, like unemployment, containment at home, right? All these things that we're dealing with, limited access to resources, separation from family and friends, depression, anxiety, stress, right? Increased substance use also. So all these things that maybe we are struggling with to a degree ourselves are even more heightened for survivors of domestic violence during a pandemic. So people experiencing domestic violence in Orange County, North Carolina, can turn to the Compass Center for support, which is a local domestic violence agency in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I have the privilege of working at the Compass Center, where we offer our clients a holistic programming which addresses all aspects of domestic violence. So we offer client services in emergency situations. We offer self-sufficiency opportunities like financial and career counseling. And we also do preventative work, which is my passion project, where we are educating young people about consent and healthy relationships so that we can prevent domestic violence from happening in the first place. So this month, we're in October, and it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So Claire and I are trying to help Compass by raising funds to keep our programs going, especially during this pandemic. So every dollar that you contribute tonight and through your ticket sales will go to things like staffing our 24/7 hotline, to providing new emergency housing options for survivors, which is a new program that we're really, really excited to offer starting this year. And it also will go to offering one-on-one assistance for filing legal protective orders, which can make all the difference for a survivor. So even $5 tonight is gonna make a really, really big difference. So let's see if Claire, can Claire unmute? No? I'll help you, Claire. There you go.
Good evening, hi. Ooh. Okay, so I'm Claire. And in addition to supporting our domestic violence agency in our community, tonight we also want to bring you a little delight during these stressful times. So we think storytelling is a powerful tool, and it can offer an opportunity to deeply connect with others during a time that has been difficult. We believe our communities can be stronger when we can find the courage to show up and to share our stories. So tonight, we will hear from a team of amazing storytellers who will be speaking about courage and bravery. We ask that while you are listening, you think about what bravery looks like in your life. And following the formal stories, we'll break out into smaller groups and invite you to share. So we'll invite you to share to describe a time where you were brave, or a time when someone close to you was brave, and to also reflect on what does bravery look like to you. So this opportunity in the small groups will be a chance to meet someone new and build a little community. We're from all over the country here. We have a set of volunteers that will help facilitate those conversations, so don't worry, we got you covered. And it's gonna be a fun evening. So if you hear things that you like, that you are moved, we do encourage you to donate. We'll put the GoFundMe page here, and we really appreciate your participation and engagement tonight. So let's get to it.
Thank you so much, Claire and Leslie. And it is my honor to introduce your first featured storyteller, Brahima Moiwai. He grew up in Sierra Leone, and he's been a storyteller for decades and is currently affiliated with the North Carolina Association for Black Storytellers. He was raised by a griot grandmother who homeschooled her daughters as well as their 24 children. Now that, if you ask me, is a brave woman. As the 22nd grandchild, Brahima was the only one who was allowed to leave home, but we're very glad that he did. And we're thrilled that his journey brought him here to North Carolina. Brahima is featured in the film Acoustics of Care, which you can find on YouTube. It highlights his work as a performing artist who brings the joy of arts to hospitalized patients through the door-to-door program at UNC Medical Center in Chapel Hill. Brahima, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Welcome.
Unmute. Can you unmute?
Oh, it sounds like you're still muted.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you all this evening. I want us to breathe together so that you can listen to my story. As you can see, I have an accent. I speak 13 languages, and so we all have to learn to listen to one another. So it's 2 lines, word. I want you to sing with me. It's a call and response. So the first line is, I want you to tell. Can you say that?
I want you
I
to
want
tell.
you to tell.
I want you to tell. Yeah. And the other line is, tell me a story.
Tell me a story.
Naima, I think you are on mute again.
Muted. San Miranda.
Let me hear you say, I want you to tell.
I want you to tell.
Tell me a story.
Tell me a story.
Good, good. I love that. I love that. Okay, so in this little song,
Brima, you're on mute again. Can you unmute?
can you come close that so that you can unmute? Yeah. Okay, my turn. I want you to tell.
You should tell.
Tell me a story.
Tell me a
Story.
And tell me a story.
Tell me
Tell me a
Story. Story. Show me a story. All right. I guess Zoom is like zooming in and out. But I will start my story. How would you eat without bending your elbow? Well, once lived an empress. She ruled over a land that was 4 times the size of this country. That's really big. Is that right? Really huge. Her subjects in her country, she made sure that the economy was doing well for everybody. I mean, everybody had pocket loads of money. Their purses were all full of money. Everybody had a job. Everybody was doing fine. Except they were not getting along. Yeah. Well, somebody might say because of the money, I have money, you have money, so I don't really care for you because I have money. But it went beyond that. Whatever made them, what made them not get along could have been other things. But this empress noticed that. She said, I have worked so hard to make my people be comfortable taking care of their children. We have healthcare, we have, you name it. We have schools and both private and public, and everybody is doing, but my people are not getting along. So she thought about it and thought about it, thought about it and thought about it. She thought and thought about it and thought about it. She thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. Well, she has been thinking about that. I tell you, she goes to bed sometimes she couldn't even sleep. How was she going to make her people get along? Well, the day came. Today you would say she came via a television in her beautiful purple dress. She stood there and she talked to the entire country. You all look at me here. And of course, folks that were not paying attention, they turned around and saw this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful woman in her purple dress. And she is the leader, the president of our country. And she said, the economy has been doing so well for everybody, but I realize that you all are not getting along. So I have decided I'm going to throw a party for the entire country. Where skeptics were like, as huge as this country is, you're going to throw a party? Oh, yes. She was determined. So she flew in her cuts, her chefs from distant lands, all over. Today you would say they flew in, but she brought them in from distant country and told them, you have to cook all the all the recipes that you ever learned. And you're also going to cook recipes that folks love in this country. I mean, so you're talking about vegan, you're talking about vegetarian, I mean, they covered all the 9 yards. Well, the folks actually cooked for a whole month. So that whole time, the nation was waiting. So can you help me by saying, they waited and 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 waited. Let me hear you. Waited
And waited.
waited
Waited and waited.
waited and waited and waited. Well, the 30 or 31 days was gone. And of course, on that day, every highway was full of tables. Street corners, all full of tables. I mean, you imagine the highways we have in this country, for example. I mean, it was like 4 times the size of that. Every highway, every street corner was filled with tables. All that food, cassava leaves, potato leaves, okra stew, I mean, cornbread, filet mignon. I mean, you name it. Name your favorite food. It was there. Drinks, every table was covered. Then she came again. You can say she came via television in her beautiful red dress. And she had this to say. All right, you all, I had promised you all a party. And today is the party and nobody is going to go to work. But as you can see, every table is full. Every corner of this country is filled with food. And the chefs had actually done a great job. And folks stood there listening to their leader. And she had this to say. She said, but I want you all to eat without bending your elbows. Whoa. Skeptics were like, what? You went through all this trouble, you've spent so much taxpayer money and to throw this party, and you want to what? We should what? We should eat without bending our elbows? Some folks stood there smelling that beautiful, I mean, delicious food, and they're like, I'm marching out of here. Some people marched out of the party. The rest stood there, smelling all that food. In fact, some people went to the table, picked up a chicken, drumstick, threw it, fried chicken, threw it in the air, and tried to catch it with their mouth, and it fell on the floor. Yeah. And they stood there wondering, how can you eat without bending your elbows? Well, in the middle of that doubt that everybody had was a woman, a young woman in her 20s. She held the hand of another woman. She said, come with me. She had an idea, but she was not sure whether this idea will work. She thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. The 2 women walked towards the table, and she told her new partner, she said, can you just, you're a vegan, is that right? Can you just fill your plate with whatever you want? I go both ways. I'm a vegetarian, half vegetarian and half, carnivorous, whatever you call it. But the 2 women filled their plates, and they went to a table, they sat down, and they swapped their plates. And this woman, with this idea that she just had, she said, I want you to feed me, and I can also feed you. So those 2 women, with their plates swapped, picked food, fed each other. And when folks saw this, the courage this woman had to come up with this idea, when folks saw this, it was like a fire in the dry woodland. It burnt across the entire country. Folks could just turn around, whoever was next to them, grab them, and you're going to be my partner. And they filled their plates and they were feeding each other. And all the drinks was gone, all the food was gone. And then Empress came. You can say again, via television. And she thanked everybody for eating without bending their elbows. But what happened to the folks? Mr. Smith and Mr. Jackson, they met for the first time. Mr. Smith said, by the way, what is your name? Oh, I'm Mr. Jackson. And I'm Mr. Smith. And when those folks went home, I tell you, every week, so it's almost like every day, they would pick up a phone and call each other. Hey, how are you doing? How are your family? Well, you might think that the courage of this woman, who basically she was not even sure about it, but it became, she was brave enough to test it. But like a storyteller, I throw a dime, I step on a dime, and I picked it up and I swallow it, and I guess I open my mouth and there's a sunshine over North Kakilake. In this COVID moment, I think we all should try to eat without bending our elbows. Because whenever you allow somebody's hand to go into your mouth, that's trusting. And in the COVID moment, I think we should all try to, not in exact those words, eat without bending our elbows, but we should all try to wear our masks so that we can protect each other. That story happened a long time ago, and it happened at the time that it did. That's the end of that story.
Brahima, thank you so much for that wonderful story. I loved the drums. I loved your energy. I loved that Empress and the lady who came to the table with her wonderful idea. I think if we could find them and bring them to the United States, we could probably learn a wealth of lessons from them right now, especially our leadership. We could all use that. And I will take your words to heart and try my very best to eat without bending my elbows. So thank you so much for that wonderful story.
Thank you.
I also wanted to mention to everybody, as part of our event tonight, so far we have raised over $2,000, so that is wonderful. Thank you to everyone who has contributed so far, and please keep those gifts coming in. If you're having a good time, if you're enjoying this, we encourage you just to give whatever you can to the Compass Center. I am so honored to introduce your next storyteller, George Spencer. George is a storyteller, an author, and a painter. He is a contributing writer at Virginia, which is the alumni magazine of the University of Virginia. And he also writes for alumni media at Vanderbilt, Carleton University, and UNC. And he is also author of the amazing book, Courage 101, True Tales of Grit and Glory. It might be hard for you to see because of my background here on Zoom, but hopefully you can get a glimpse of that. And a special announcement, whoever our top donor is tonight, we will be sending you a copy of Courage 101 as a thank you for that. So George is here this evening to tell us about 3 courageous women from throughout history. He's going to share their stories and help us recognize what we have to learn from them. And without further ado, I want to turn it over to George and welcome him to share some stories.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to be here to speak to you all on behalf of the Compass Center. I'm the author of the book, Courage 101, True Tales of Grit and Glory. It contains 101 chapters, each chapter telling a true life adventure on the part of someone who's famous or an unsung hero. And the title of my talk tonight, based on 3 of those chapters, is Wise Words from 3 Wise Women. And by strange coincidence, the first of the 3 women was named Brownie Wise, because she was indeed a wise woman, being named Wise. She got her nickname Brownie because when she was a little girl, she had beautiful big brown eyes. But in 1949, life was not so beautiful for Brownie Wise. She was a single mother living in Detroit, and she was trying to make ends meet working as a department store clerk. Well, one day at the department store, it was somebody's birthday, and in the back room, they had a party for that person. And they had a card table, and on top of the card table, there were cakes and cupcakes and things to drink and containers full of special treats. Well, the card table was so jammed full of food that one of the containers fell off onto the hard floor. And if you're old enough, and if you remember back in the day, when your mom had leftovers, she put it in a glass container and maybe put wax paper around the top. So when this container fell on the hard floor, everyone thought it would shatter. Everyone thought the top would fly off. Everyone thought the liquid would fly out across the floor. But none of those things happened. This container just kind of went bump and bounced. It didn't break. And the party went on, of course, but this caught Brownie's interest, and she was very curious, and she knew that this product was for sale in the store. And she went to the manager and she said, "Tell me about this container." The manager said, "Oh, this is the worst thing we have in the store. It's a piece of junk. Nobody wants to buy it. We're going to stop selling it." Well, that didn't deter Brownie Wise, not a bit. She did some research and she found out who the inventor was and who owned the company that made it. And she called up the inventor, who was named Earl, and he lived in New Hampshire. Now, remember, this is in 1949, and making a long-distance phone call in those days was a big deal, and it cost a lot of money. And she didn't have a lot of money. And she was a single lady calling some strange man in New Hampshire. But she called anyway. And she got Earl on the phone. Earl was the inventor, and he owned the company. And she said, "Earl, you're a genius. You're a great inventor, but I don't think you know how to sell this product. I want you to give me a chance to sell it, and I want to sell it in a new and different way. I think the way to sell this product is to get women together in parties. You get women together in parties having fun, they're in a good mood, they're in the mood to buy. Let me sell it in parties like that." And so Earl, his name was Earl Tupper, the inventor of Tupperware, he said, "I guess so, maybe you're right." And he gave her a sales district. She moved down to Florida and she began creating these home parties to sell Tupperware. I'm here to tell you that in 1958, Brownie Wise had 10,000 women working for her around the country, 10,000 women running these home parties. And by 1954, she had become the most famous businesswoman in America. She was the first woman to appear on the cover of Business Week magazine. And together, she and Earl created a company that grossed in the mid-1950s $30 million a year, which in today's money is $230 million a year. It was a huge company. Well, eventually, Brownie and Earl had a falling out. Earl owned the company, Brownie got fired, she went on to start another company. But Brownie was a brave lady and she had a motto. Her motto was, "Be like the steam kettle. Even though you're up to your neck in hot water, keep on singing." Now, the next woman I'd like to tell you about, she wished she had any kind of food container, and she was in real hot water and up to her neck in it. Her name was Julianne Kopecky. She was 17 years old. She had just graduated from high school, and of all things, she graduated from high school on Christmas Eve. She lived in Lima, Peru, and I guess south of the equator, things are kind of upside down because that's when they graduate from high school, right before Christmas. And so she was wearing her best clothes, her graduation outfit, a white mini dress, sandals, and she and her mom went to the airport. They were going to spend Christmas with her dad, who lived on the other side of Peru, on the other side of the Amazon. So in the afternoon of December 24th, 1970, she and her mother boarded a 4-engine passenger plane on a commercial flight to fly over the Amazon. Julianne has the window seat. Her mom's in the middle of the day, at 10,000 feet. There's a thunderstorm. Julianne looks out the window, and just in time to see a thunderbolt, lightning strike the wing of the plane. The next thing she knows, the entire plane erupts, explodes into steel confetti. She blacks out. And when she wakes up, all she can see is broccoli. And she asks herself, why is it I can only see broccoli? And it was at that point that she realized that she was still strapped into her seat and that she was falling face down and that she was so high above the Amazon that the entire jungle canopy looked like broccoli. Mercifully, she blacks out again, and when she wakes up again, she's on the ground. She's still strapped into her seat. Her mother's nowhere to be found. There's no other wreckage around. She has a few scratches and cuts, but she's essentially unhurt. She gets up. She's wearing a white mini dress. She's lost one of her sandals. She's lost her glasses. All she has to eat is a bag of hard candy. She yells for her mother. No response. She looks around for the rest of the plane, the rest of the passengers. She can't find a soul. Overhead, she hears the search planes and helicopters overhead, but the jungle canopy is too thick. They can't see her. So she sits down and she spends a day deciding what to do. And she realizes that she has to walk out of the Amazon. And she remembered that once her father had told her, if you see a trickle of water, follow it. The trickle will turn into a brook. The brook will turn into a stream. The stream will turn into a river. And a river will lead you to civilization. And so for the next 10 days, Julianne Kopecky walked and swam out of the Amazon wearing a white mini dress with one sandal, with no glasses, with only a bag of hard candy to eat. She swam in the river, not fearing the piranha or the alligators. Finally, after 10 days, she came to a shack. She rummaged around the shack, found a can of gasoline. Now, she'd been in the jungle for 10 or 11 days now, and strange and bizarre insects had laid their larvae in her flesh of her arms, and she poured gasoline over her arms and watched the larvae wriggle out. And finally, after a number of hours, a man in a motorboat came by. And if she hadn't been there at precisely that time, that man wouldn't have come by for another week. And if she'd stayed in the jungle, she would have died. Now, there is a catch to the story. Both of her parents were scientists who lived on the edge of the jungle. And she knew a few survival tips. She knew that if she swam in the current of the fast-flowing river, the piranha wouldn't attack because they congregated in stagnant water. Well, when the press caught up with her back there in 1970, as you know, the press will catch up with people who've done amazing things. They said, how did you do it? How did you survive, Julianne? And she said to the reporters, I don't give up. I don't give up. I don't give up. And that's how she did it. She didn't give up. She kept going. Now, the third wise woman was not a teenager, and she wasn't a middle-aged woman. She was an elderly lady named Anna Robertson. And I'm here to tell you, Anna Robertson had a pretty hard life. She was born in 1860 in New York State, poor family, many children. She went to a one-room schoolhouse, but a lot of times she couldn't go because she had to help around the house, help with the younger children. At the age of 12, she had to drop out of the one-room schoolhouse. She had to take a job as a maid, and it wasn't even near her family. She had to go down to Staunton, Virginia, work as a maid. Well, she gets married. She has 10 children. Alas, 5 died in infancy. Only 5 survived to adulthood. The marriage was long and good. It lasted 40 years. In 1927, her husband died. Finally, as Anna Robertson grew older, one of her daughters said, Mom, come on, live up with me in Hoosick Falls, New York. So Anna Robertson moved up to Hoosick Falls, New York and lived with her daughter, became part of her daughter's family. Now, Anna Robertson was a beautiful quilter. Her quilts were fantastic, and she could sell them like crazy at the county fairs. But as Anna got into her 70s, arthritis set in, and she just couldn't work the needle and thread with the same magic that she could when she was a younger woman. And she had to give up quilting. It hurt too much. Her daughter saw that she was miserable and said, Mom, you know, when you were a little girl, didn't you like to paint? Maybe you should try painting again. So Anna Robertson said, okay, I'll pick it up. I'll try it again. And Anna picked it up, and she'd like to paint things like scenes of Thanksgiving dinners, or people going to church, or people just doing things that people in small New England villages do, like tapping maple trees. And she would take those paintings to the county fairs every year along with her jams and jellies. Now, the jams and jellies, they'd sell out. Nobody wanted to buy her paintings, not a bit. This went on for a couple of years and made Anna very sad. So finally, she took her paintings to the local drugstore and asked the druggist, said, would you try to sell my paintings? Maybe put them in the store window, see if you can sell them. Druggist said, what price should I put on them? She said, oh, no, $3, $4. So that's what he did. Those paintings sat there for months. Nobody bought a one of those paintings. Until one day, a man from New York City came through town. He pulled up to a stop sign in front of the drugstore, looked in the window, got out of his car, and he went in and said to the druggist, "Those paintings for sale?" The druggist said, "Yes, sir." I said, "How much?" $3 or $4. He said, "I'll buy all of them." So he put 7, 8, 9, 10 paintings in his car and drove back to Manhattan. This man was an art collector. He took these paintings to some of the best art galleries in Manhattan. You know what? They all turned them down. They weren't interested. He also took the paintings somewhere else. He took them to a place called MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. It so happened that the Museum of Modern Art was planning an exhibition of the works of modern living American folk artists, and they took one of Anna Robertson's paintings. Now, by this time, Anna wasn't going by that name. Robertson was her maiden name. Her last name, her married name, was Moses. And by this time, she had grandchildren, and most people called her Grandma Moses. Within a few years, Grandma Moses became one of the most famous artists in the United States. She lived a few miles from Norman Rockwell, who was in Arlington, Vermont, just a few miles away, and they became fast friends. She became so popular, her face was on the cover of Time magazine. Harry Truman invited her to the White House to play piano for her. Her paintings were licensed to coffee cans, draperies, greeting cards, lipsticks, even cigarettes. And in a few years, she was grossing $400,000 a year, which is about $4 million a year in today's money. Grandma Moses lived to a ripe old age of 101, and she had a motto too. Her motto was, "Life is what we make it. Always has been, always will be." Brownie Wise said, "Be like the steam kettle. Keep on singing even though you're up to your neck in hot water." Julianne Kopecky said, "I don't give up, I don't give up, I don't give up." And Grandma Moses said, "Life is what you make of it. Always has been, always will be." I'm here to tell you that life has challenges. God gives us the nuts, as an old German proverb goes. God gives us the nuts, but he does not crack them. Well, you've got to work at it. You've got to crack those nuts if you want to get to the sweet stuff inside. And you can do it if you try hard enough. And if you're in a jungle, you can walk out. And if you've got a crummy job in a department store, you can get out of that too. And if you like to paint or quilt, you can make something of that as well. Keep going, keep trying. Thank you for listening.
George, thank you so much for sharing those stories. The message of each and every one was so powerful. But I gotta say, I think the one that resonated with me the most was Julianne Kopecky's story. When you were talking about her wandering through the wilderness until she found that shack, it made me think about Goldilocks, which was one of my favorite stories from childhood. And everybody here hopefully has heard that story, but just in case not, Goldilocks was a young girl who was wandering in the woods and got lost. And as the day turned into night, she realized that she needed a place to stay. So she went into a home that belonged to 3 bears. And at first she tried the Papa Bear's bed and it didn't fit and it didn't feel right. So then she tried the Mother Bear's bed and it didn't fit and it didn't feel right. And then she tried the Baby Bear's bed and it was just right. It was just what she needed. And she didn't give up until she found that. And one theme that has come out for me is that bravery is about not giving up. It's about persisting. And I remember a time in the not so distant past when I felt a lot like Goldilocks or Julianne, where I was wandering and just looking for help and looking for hope. I volunteer with Compass Center now, not only because I believe in and support the mission of what they do, but I am also a survivor of domestic violence myself. And I can tell you that one of the bravest things that I ever did was ask for help. After years of trying to fix an unhealthy relationship and home life without success, I started to realize that I was not in control, and I knew that I needed to do something different with my life. And I think I started asking for help even before I knew that I was asking for help. I began opening up to friends and family about what life was like at home, and they had some very firm ideas about what they thought I should do. Everybody said, "You should just leave, just pack your bags and leave." But they didn't have a lot of sympathy when I tried to tell them why I felt like I couldn't leave, what my reasons were for staying. And then at times when I did try to leave and I came back, which is very common among people who are living in relationships where there is a dynamic of abuse and control, my friends and my family would get very frustrated with me. So even though they meant well, they weren't always helpful. So I persisted. I tried something else. Next, I went to church and I talked with members of my congregation about life at home. And they had the best of intentions, just like my friends and family. They encouraged me to stay. They shared scriptures and they prayed with me. And they were insistent that if I just had enough faith, things would get better. But things didn't get better. And I was still searching for help and hope. And thankfully, I found it. I went to an agency in my community where I was living at the time that was very similar to Compass Center. And I was really surprised to learn that they did not have an agenda. They didn't even have advice for me. What they did have to offer me was a safe place where I could go and talk and people would listen and believe me. And they had resources and support to offer that nobody else had offered me yet. And they reinforced to me over and over and over again that no matter what I was going through, I always had a choice and I could always ask for help. And it was so empowering to hear those words after having lived in this situation for so long where I felt like I had no control. It felt very good to hear that I did have a choice, and that meant that I did have some control. And I felt a lot like Goldilocks after she found herself in the bed of Baby Bear. I had found help, and it felt right, and it gave me respite, and I finally felt safe and in control. So on my own terms and on my own timeline, I was able to leave and rebuild my life with the help of this agency. And everyone who's here tonight, gathered around with us, I want to invite you to contribute to the Compass Center because I know from personal experience that organizations like Compass give people that safe place and the support that they need. They save lives and they help people rebuild their lives and become self-sufficient so that they never again have to feel like they don't have control or they don't have a choice. The Compass Center can't do what they do without you, without the support of generous donors. So I, again, just want to encourage you to give whatever you can. And I want to take a minute to give you some specific examples of how your support can make a difference. A gift of $100 provides 24 hours of support for the hotline, which anyone can call at any time and speak to someone in English or Spanish just to ask questions or get information or find out about services available to support those who are experiencing violence at home. A gift of $250 provides 5 financial counseling sessions to a survivor. And this kind of support is essential to people who are rebuilding their lives and are working towards self-sufficiency. A gift of $500 gives 10 people one-on-one assistance in completing and filing an order of protection. And a gift of $1,000 provides a night of emergency shelter for 10 people who have fled or are in crisis. So these services, the things that you are supporting, they are literally saving lives. They are giving women and families the opportunity to change their stories and tell their own tales of bravery as they become survivors. The late Maya Angelou, and resident of North Carolina, said that there is no greater tragedy than an untold story. And it's been such a joy for me to hear the stories that have been shared this evening about bravery and brave women and how they have persisted through challenges and they have been able to rewrite the stories and change their paths and create a new destiny. And that's why I volunteer with and support Compass Center, because that's what they're doing for people just like me every day. I do want to encourage you again to give whatever you can to Compass Center to support the work that they're doing. And at this time, I do want to turn it over to Leslie to take everyone into breakout rooms and give you all a chance to share your stories as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy and George and Brima, for those amazing stories. I'm just so touched that all of you shared and were willing to take this time to help Compass Center out tonight. So I'm going to stop the recording before I forget so that we're not